this kid confronted me and he goes, oh, you said you were gonna stab me. Like you were woofing, you said you were gonna stab me. Like, what's up?
You know, being in a gang, it kind of nurtures that mindset of like impulsiveness, right? Like you just do whatever you do.
Ruslan.
So what is your upbringing like? Like you're growing up. The immigrant thing is always interesting, man, especially in communities that have Americans. Like I remember coming in them, they were like, oh, you guys are commies, like, because Azerbaijan was a part of the Soviet Union.
Right.
So I'm like fresh. I don't know, like, what is communism? Like, what do we even? I didn't even know there was beef like that. Right. You know. So what is your experience in terms of just growing up? Were you immersed in your own culture in terms of like all your friends and family and everyone you were around was Chinese, or was it like a mixed group of people that you're growing up around?
It was actually mixed. It was, you know, people who are from the San Gabriel Valley know this. It's 50% Asian, 50% Hispanic. Back then, it was more Hispanic. You know, over the years, more Asians started immigrating in. But yeah, it was like Chinese, Vietnamese, and Hispanics, Mexican, Salvadorian, etc. So yeah, it was straight culture shock, bro. That's the first time, you know, we learned about bullying. That's the first time we learned about gang culture, just a lot of drugs, alcohol, all that stuff.
And was that in a response to some of the other gangs around, or was that, hey, we're just kind of be trendy because gangster rap is trendy and this is what we're on? Like what was that? Because you guys had your own gangs, right?
Yes.
Now we tried to start our own gang, but it was a complete flop. Like we it was 3 of us in the same apartment building, you know? So not to say we got into a lot of trouble, but it sounds like you guys had official gangs and, you know, there was a whole lot to it.
Yeah.
Unpack some of that zeitgeist for me.
I think honestly, at least, and just speaking for my neighborhood, like we started up north and it was mainly for money. You know, we were just hustlers, more like mafiosos type stuff. But as they kind of moved down to Southern California, LA in itself has a crazy gang culture. Oh yeah, especially in the late 90s basically to early 2000s was all gang banging. Yep. So we adopted that a lot from the Hispanics. We moved very similar to them. We dressed like them, some parts. That was the influential thing. It was like a mixture of also the gangster rap. So I would say it was it pulled from everything, from needing to make money because we were impoverished. And, you know, we like listened to, back then it was Tupac, Bone Thugs and Harmony, you know, all those people. And just that gangster rap era. And then on top of that, being around people who were like these Hispanic gangs that are in my area go back to like 1930s, 1940s, you know, so.
Wow. Now, okay, because there's so many, you know, it's an interesting concept because when I was a kid, it was the same thing, bro. Like I grew up in Southeast San Diego, so not the same, but definitely a different time in the 90s. And I remember Doggy Style coming out. I remember The Chronic. I remember Tupac getting out of jail and signing with Death Row. Like I remember these like monumental moments. And in hindsight, it's an interesting tension of like how much of this was life imitating art and how much of this was art reflecting the real life struggle.
Right.
And so if you had to take an assessment, do you think that gangster rap hurt impoverished areas where folks are growing up on Section 8? Or do you think it was just a reflection and then it just becomes a feedback loop? Like we are this, so we listen to this, that makes us like this more, and we stay like, you know what I mean?
You know, I that's such a tough question because for me personally, like I remember when we didn't do drugs, so Asians didn't do a lot of drugs. What would amp us up to go do drive-bys and stuff like that was gangster rap. It was almost like putting us in a trend. So I can say it kind of both sides, where it's the art also reflecting, but also it's really hard to say. But for me personally, in my personal experience, I feel like the rap influenced a lot because everyone at that time, late 90s, early 2000s, 90s even, all the way up, it was just like everyone was gangbanging. Everyone had that look. Everyone had that feel. Like even kids in the math club, like nerds, like had that, you know, Cortez's, Chucks, you know, big old long, you know, bandanas and this and that. And I'm just like, man, that's crazy. Like everybody was banged out basically.
Man, I remember my 4th grade year, I was a kid, and my 5th grade year, I was Dickie fitted out, bro. Dickies, Ben Davis, Chucks, you know, and like that stark of a contrast. By the time I'm going into 6th grade, I'm already arrested. I already caught a case, right? And a saving grace for me was we never got access to guns. Like for whatever reason, like that just we were doing all the goofy things that you do in that environment when your father's not in your life and all those sorts of things. But we never got access to firearms. But I would like carry a knife, and thought I was like a tough guy. And I remember this new kid moved in across the street, and he was like, I guess kind of bullying, because I was like the only like one of three white kids on the block, because it's predominantly Black and Hispanic in San Diego. Yeah. And I remember one time this kid confronted me and he goes, "Oh, you said you were gonna stab me. Like you were woofing. You said you were gonna stab me. Like what's up?" We were walking to school, and I just froze up, bro. Yeah. I just froze up, and I had the knife on me, and I didn't go through with it. And there was something in me that just like I couldn't turn up all the way. And I don't know if it's just because firearms made it easier to do stuff like that or what. But like who knows where it could have went had I been like, all right, like I want to try to fight this dude that's bigger with a knife. Like who knows how that could have turned out, you know? Hey, you want to see something crazy? 67% of the people who watch this channel are not subscribed. Do me a quick favor, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date on all the videos here on the Blessed God Studios channel. In your situation, it really went left, you know? And was it the access to firearms and that whole thing that you think that kind of like got you guys revved up to do the drives and all this stuff?
I think it was just the influence in the area. You know, I don't know how the politics and how Southeast San Diego programmed. I know it's pretty hood, you know, but the way that the San Gabriel Valley was, it was very racially divided. You know, I remember people would just beat up other people based off of their race. And like this went back and forth. Asians did it to Mexicans. There were some of the homies who, you know, also hopped in the cars just hunting for them. And then it also went the other way, you know? So when it was like that, there was a lot of turmoil. And I feel like it's because a lot of the people who grow up in Hispanic households and Chinese households, they don't have that love. Like Hispanics have that like machismo, like macho man type of thing. I don't tell my son I love you type of stuff. And Asians have the same thing. I never heard I love you from my parents. So, and my dad was so he would beat on me. And it was that rage that kind of, I guess that trauma as a kid that really propelled me to just go left on everything. You know, being in a gang, it kind of nurtures that mindset of like impulsiveness, right? Like you just do whatever you do, whatever comes to you, you're angry, fight. You want to rob somebody. You want to shoot somebody. Like it's literally, you don't have time to process anything. You're just like, go.
Do you think the machismo and the lack of showing love with Hispanic, Asian families, I would say Russian families, Armenian families, same, like even the word I love you in Russian is a much more romantic word than like if I were to tell my son I love him in Russian, it would just sound like I'm saying it to a, you know what I mean? Like it's just weird. Do you think that that everything you just described, which I relate to, is a byproduct of the immigrant survival mentality, or do you think these are just things embedded in our culture because we come from, you know, I come from communism, you know, same thing for you. What do you think that is?
I think it is actually something that's part of the culture. You know, I think you know, you're gonna do the things that you've seen, right? It's a generational thing. And I know my grandparents never told my parents I love you, and you know that they just kind of like copy and paste type of parenting where it's like, okay, well, you know, my dad did this, I turned out okay, so I don't have a manual, I'm just gonna do that. And it was just passed down. And at the core of everything, there was just no exchange. You know, I believe that there was no exchange of emotion, there was no exchange of like any hearts. It was more just like, do what I say and that's it. So of course, you know, that caused rebellion, that caused, well, I always have to do what you say, I can't do what I want. And I just hit the streets after that. As
we're going to go over to our Patreon exclusive segment, I'm going to ask Johnny a few more questions specifically about his interaction with his former gang members and how all of that works, because there's a family dynamic there. We're going to talk about the use of profanity and where he kind of lands on that, because that was some of the pushback you guys had when I reacted to his video, and a couple other topics. So meet us over on Patreon.
Hey, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see the full extended version of this podcast, be sure to sign up for our Patreon community for only $5 a month. It'll really help us continue contextualizing the gospel using YouTube, media, and podcasting. And in exchange, you will get full unedited versions of the podcast, of our daily after party streams, a discount for our merch store, and exclusive access to our private Discord server. It's only $5 a month. The link for Patreon is in the description of this video, as well as the pinned comment below. Again, hit the link in the description, sign up now, and I'll see you over there, all right? Peace.